So, we had a little bit of a controversy this week when we made the mistake of telling the truth about Iowa's voting rolls. And I'll tell you the background of what happened. So, it's over the weekend, and I'm thinking, I wonder, because we had issued a study last year, we had done a study last year that we reported on in January. And it's the best available data generally. So we look at data sent to the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal agency. It's certified by the Secretaries of State, and they send voter registration and other data to the Election Assistance Commission. And it's the best available data at the time. It's released by the Election Assistance Commission in the summer of 2000, basically the summer every other year, in this case 2019. And so we looked at that data and compared it to census data, contemporaneous census data that's contemporaneous with the voter registration data, and we found that there are nearly 350 counties across the country with more people on the rolls than eligible to vote, and as many as 2.5 million extra names. And based on that study, we sent warning letters late last year to 5 different states, 19 counties: North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Colorado, North Carolina, and there's a 5th state I'm not remembering. Oh, California. How can I forget? And we've previously, using this analytical approach, had great success in court in terms of convincing states to either agree to a consent decree in the case of Kentucky, settle the case in the case of Los Angeles County, to remove, at least in those 2 states, nearly 2 million names from the rolls. Ultimately, 2 million extra names from the rolls. People who are on the rolls, who have likely moved away, or otherwise ineligible to vote, who shouldn't be on the rolls anymore. With the theory being, federal law requires you to take reasonable steps to clean off the rolls. And if you got more people on the rolls than are living there and eligible to vote, that's a pretty good indication you're not taking the steps necessary. And it's usually a good basis for us to start asking questions and finding out and confirming they're not doing their job. So over the weekend, I'm thinking, well, what about Iowa? What did our study show there? And it turns out our study showed there were 8 counties over 100% of the rolls. 8 counties. Only 18,000 names, but that's a lot of names for Iowa. And so the blowback was outrageous. There's a Secretary of State, Secretary Payton, Iowa, Republican, who falsely accused us of putting out this information. And what was the basis for that? They said we used old data. He said you should use new census data and unconfirmed data we put that he doesn't certify and won't be finalized in terms of what the actual numbers are, at least for federal government purposes, until next year. He says that shows a different result. Well, even using his new data, you know what his new data shows? 5 counties over 100% of the voting rolls. Nearly 3 dozen counties over 95%. Why is that number important? Let me tell you this. Frankly, any registration rate in a county, the registration rates tend to be 80% or lower. 80% is like on a really high-end range. 75% is probably a fairer number. So when you're at 95% and above, warning lights go off. When you're at 100% and above, the whistles go off. And so on the basis of this misinformation, they attacked us. The media falsely accused us of putting out false information, even though our information is the best available information out there, which is consistent with new information, which frankly isn't as reliable. Washington Post was particularly dishonest because they said the initial headline was Judicial Watch puts out false claims of voter fraud. And we did nothing of the sort. We didn't allege voter fraud. Obviously, if you have dirty voting rolls, it may encourage voter fraud or may result in voter fraud, but we didn't allege any voter fraud. And I pushed back on the Washington Post. I sent an email. There's a story maybe we can link it at Real Clear Investigations or Real Clear Politics by Mark Hemingway that describes what went on. I pushed back on the Washington Post. I said, you need to correct your headline. It's false. We did not allege voter fraud. And they wrote back saying, well, saying they're dirty election rolls is the same thing as saying voter fraud. I mean, it's Orwellian what the liberals in the media are willing to do and say to justify their lies about a group they don't like, which is Judicial Watch. And the reaction to our information about Iowa is just, it shows you how important our work is, because we're the only ones defending the rule of law on this, practically speaking. No one else is doing this. No one else is out there cleaning the rolls the way we are, going to court to try to get the rolls clean, exposing what's going on. And the left accuses us of being partisan. We're in a battle with the Iowa Secretary of State, who's a Republican. Kentucky is largely run by Republicans. They had to clean up their rolls. Our cases against Ohio and Indiana, Republican-controlled states largely. And we've been victimized by media lies by a government official who helped convince Facebook to suppress a post we had put up. And Instagram too, because Facebook owns Instagram. We're trying to figure out how to undo that suppression. But what a dangerous situation in terms of our First Amendment. We have a government official, an elected official in Iowa, I think he's elected, Secretary of State, putting out misinformation, and big tech companies succumbing to a pressure campaign from dishonest media, using this government official as a backstop, suppress our information. You worry, it's not big tech censorship you should worry about. It's the big tech censorship that happens as a result of alliances and pressure from government officials. Adam Schiff, for instance, has pressured big tech to suppress the name of the alleged whistleblower. If I mention his name, Facebook will take our video down. YouTube will take our video down, even though this alleged whistleblower is a senior official at the CIA on Ukraine who was assigned to both the Obama White House and the Trump White House. And big tech has caved to Adam Schiff's pretend theory that he's, quote, a whistleblower and his name can't be disclosed. We can know everyone else involved, but not this whistleblower. The same goes for these election roll issues. We've had our material upheld in 4 different courts. The theory of our case vindicated by a Supreme Court case, and we're having the media telling us we don't know what we're doing. It's frustrating, but you can help. How can you help? You can spread the word about our information. You can't spread it on Facebook as it's currently written because they won't allow you to. But I encourage you to look at the information. We have 2 press releases out. We have the statement, we have the initial disclosure about the 8 counties that, according to our study, had at least 18,000 extra names. I mean, their defense is, we go to Iowa, our data shows you got extra names. Your data's old. And we go, your new data shows that you got extra names. Iowa, well, our dirty names you can't count as dirty, Iowa's response was even worse. Our lists are clean if you exclude the dirty names. They're suggesting inactive names shouldn't be counted, when in fact inactive voters are the same as regular voters. They can vote on election day. Their theory is voters who haven't been around should be treated differently than voters who are active. And that's not true under law. And frankly, it's damaging and potentially suppressing to people's right to vote. Because you hear that, you might think, well, I haven't voted in a long time, I'm out. You're not out. Go and vote. Don't listen to the government bureaucrats trying to defend their dirty rolls by suggesting your name is no longer good on the rolls, even if you live there, because it's inactive. It's government bureaucrats, government officials, and the dishonest left trying to protect themselves from having to clean up the rolls. Why do they hate discussion of dirty voting rolls? Because in Iowa, for instance, they have voter ID, which is a significant way to mitigate the threat of voter fraud caused by dirty voting rolls. Because if you go and show up to vote, let's say you know someone's moved away, you get wind they're still registered to vote because you're getting mailings or you just guessed right, and you go to vote in their name, it's difficult to do if you need an ID to do it. In California, where they have millions of names that we had found extra on the rolls, you can go to California, they don't ask you for voter ID. Pennsylvania, they don't ask you for voter ID. North Carolina, there's no voter ID there, thanks to the Obama gang and leftist groups down there that work with an activist court to shut it down. Most of the big states don't have voter ID. That's why they hate discussions by Judicial Watch exposing the dirty voting rolls. We're winning in court. They're lying. Whose side are you on? So there's more information coming out. People are wondering, I'm sure, what's going on in New Hampshire. Are the rolls in New Hampshire dirty? We don't know. Why don't we know? Because they don't report data the way other jurisdictions do. They report data, my understanding is, by township. And other jurisdictions report voter registration data by county. And so there's no real census equivalent to figure out if they got too many names by township in New Hampshire on the rolls than people living there, because census doesn't really track data by township in New Hampshire. So it's a bit of a mystery as to how dirty or clean the voter rolls in New Hampshire are. So I'd like to give you information about how clean or dirty the voting rolls in New Hampshire are, but I can't. So on top of all of it, I can't let it go. As we go to video today, unless something happened, I haven't been able to track it completely because it's obviously the caucuses have collapsed in Iowa. I don't think the dirty voting rolls had anything to do with it. And I don't know if corruption had anything to do with it, but we don't know who won in Iowa. We don't know who won in Iowa. Something bad happened, though. And if I were the state law enforcement officials in Iowa, the top state law enforcement officers, I would be, talk about raiding. I mean, look, Paul Manafort had his home raided so the FBI could take pictures of his suits, literally, suits, his clothing. Yet you have an entire caucus in a key state, Iowa. It's a small state, but it's a key state because it's the first in the nation. No law enforcement action. I'm surprised no candidate has called for law enforcement action. So we don't know who won. Was it Buttigieg? Was it Sanders? I don't know. And even if someone, quote, won, can we be confident in the result? I mean, you think elections are fair and accurate in this country? Generally, we know the general winner of an election, but in some cases, we can't be sure. And that's the case in the Iowa caucuses. So who knows? I mean, you had that Des Moines Register poll suppressed on the eve of the election, and people in the opposite campaigns. And this is not, I'm not much of a political guy. I run Judicial Watch. I don't endorse candidates. I save the politics for the guys in politics, in terms of campaign work and things like that. So I kind of watch it the way an ordinary citizen does. But I tell you what, if I were a Bernie Sanders voter, I'd be pretty annoyed right now. Remember I told you that the deep state has it in for Bernie Sanders, or we should presume the deep state has it in for Bernie Sanders? It doesn't mean I'm endorsing Bernie Sanders, or I think the deep state or that Bernie Sanders' policies are great. I'm suggesting as a candidate that is problematic for the deep state and the establishment class trying to remove President Trump from office, they have it in for him. So they have a poll that potentially shows Sanders winning and Biden significantly losing, and they suppress that on the eve of the election. And they have a caucus that collapses that allows Buttigieg to say without foundation that he, quote, won, when in fact it's not clear who won. Denying Bernie Sanders any semblance of a victory bump out of Iowa as he goes into New Hampshire. Very troubling. Very troubling. I've always said the left is willing to steal elections when necessary. And you think it means they're going to steal it from Republicans. No, it means in primaries. Upstarts, people challenging the incumbencies or the incumbent politicians. Voter fraud affects Democratic primaries in significant ways. And I don't know that's the case here in Iowa, but given the way things have been going, you can't be confident that things were done right, and it's all just as a result of incompetence by the Hillary Clinton gang that was running the app that collapsed. Who knows what was going on? But anyone who rules it out, that's not fair to do. Anyone who rules it in completely, that's not fair to do. That's why I say there needs to be an investigation.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.